Joining us now on the Stacking the Box podcast and fansided.com, a two-time first-team All-Pro with the Steelers and the Seahawks, three-time Pro Bowler, currently dominating the Denver sports radio market for 104.3 The Fan. He's also doing games for Compass Media, college, and the NFL. Chad Brown, welcome. Appreciate you making time with me and Verdi here. We appreciate it.
Well, thank you for having me on. I appreciate it as well.
So let's go bold here. Are the Seahawks the worst team in the NFL? Is there any chance that they'll actually hit the bottom and go past the Texans and the Falcons?
Oh, wow. Obviously, the quarterback is the focus there with Geno Smith and Drew Lock. Neither one has been proven to be a guy who can go out and win games for you. I'm familiar with Drew Lock for his time in Denver. And Drew Lock is a guy who has turnover issues, doesn't have great ball security, and doesn't have a level of dynamic play that would warrant him being under center with the turnover issues being what they are. So I'm not sure what they're going to do at quarterback, but I do know that Pete Carroll's philosophy, I did a coaching internship with the Seahawks, spent an entire training camp with them. Pete Carroll's philosophy is to play great defense and to run the ball and be more physical than the other team. So in Pete's mind, as crazy as this sounds, as quarterback crazy as the rest of the NFL is, he thinks he can actually win with that style. He would say, we won our Super Bowl with a great defense, and Marshawn Lynch and Russell Wilson was a small part of that. Now, of course, Russell Wilson grew as time went along, but the Seattle Seahawks Super Bowl was really based upon that tremendous defense. So he's looking to replicate that. You can get that done when you're not paying a quarterback 30 or 40 or 50 million bucks where the quarterback market is going. You can have a number of outstanding defensive players. So I'm not sure that the Seahawks are going to be as awful as you may think. I don't think they're going to be great. I don't see them being a playoff team, but at the bottoms of the league, probably not. Pete Carroll's philosophy has proven to be successful.
All right, well, let's talk about the other side of that trade. Denver gets Russell Wilson, gave up a lot to get him, but obviously a great player, warrants that. He joins a division that is not for the faint of heart. The Raiders might be the worst team in the division, and they got Devontae Adams and Chandler Jones. I'm curious, your thoughts on how the AFC West stacks up here going into 2022.
Well, I think you still have to put Kansas City on top of that division. If you want to beat the champ, you got to find a way to beat the champ. They still have Patrick Mahomes. They still have Travis Kelce. I know Tyreek Hill left. They still have Andy Reid. They still have Eric Bieniemy. So they've got a dynamic offense. They got good play callers. But the rest of the division, it's interesting to see. Pro Football Focus has the Chargers as the third most talented roster in the NFL. So that's saying a lot. They have a great quarterback in Justin Herbert. They've got a talented receiver core. The Broncos adding Russell Wilson, the thought has been around the NFL and in Denver in particular, that the Broncos are just a quarterback away. So they've got a lot of young weapons at the receiver spot. They got a talented running back. Their offensive line has been getting better the last couple of years. And then you got the Raiders with Derek Carr. Josh McDaniels obviously flamed out in his first head coaching opportunity with the Denver Broncos. I think he's probably learned a tremendous amount in the time since then. Will come into the Raiders not just armed with some of the best philosophies with Bill Belichick, but it probably has grown on his own as a coach and learns how to deal with people, because that was his issue in Denver. It wasn't the X's and O's. It was the dealing with people. So it's a really competitive division. You have great quarterbacks. Almost every GM in that division went out and got either some cornerbacks or some pass rush help to deal with those quarterbacks. All those quarterbacks have weapons, and not just in the receiver core, but in the backfields as well. So it's going to be an incredibly competitive division. It is probably going to be one of those divisions, like the league office envisions, that is going to come down to the last week or two where they schedule those division matchups in the week 17 and 18 in the regular season. So I don't necessarily have an answer for you as far as who's going to win the division. I got to say the Chiefs right now, but if any of those teams were to win the division, I would not be surprised. And if any of those teams were to be last in this division, I would not be surprised.
What's your biggest question mark when you look at Kansas City?
Obviously, they're going to score points. But what Tyreek Hill is such a unique and dynamic weapon. There's lots of speed guys in wide receiver rooms all across the league. but the amount of respect that he drew from defenses and defensive coordinators, always keeping a safety on top, that allowed Kansas City's offense to really flourish. And that gave Travis Kelce space underneath. So for Andy Reid and Eric Bieniemy, how do they create that space without that same weapon on the outside? They've added some speed to the receiver room, but there's a difference between speed and that dynamic speed that Tyreek Hill brought to the Kansas City offense. So how do they replace that from a play calling standpoint? You can put speed on the field, but is that speed respected? That's remains to be seen. So how do they create that space, not only for Travis Kelce, but also for the run game as well?
So I'm poking at the bear here, Chad, because I think you and Matt are kind of rivals right now. Verderam, my partner here, diehard Chiefs fan.
Chiefs fan. It was mostly pain throughout my life until recently, but yes.
But right, your greatest day until recently as a Chief fan was Chad's rookie year when Joe Montana beat the Steelers. Right,
First game I remember watching. Yeah, I was a kid.
So okay, so there we go. There's that connection, and now. Because I know, Verderam, correct me if I'm wrong, but when Chad says that anybody can finish last in the division, like that's fighting words for you, buddy. I know.
No, I mean, look, I think Chad's right in the sense of division's so tight. It's a division where I think it's going to, in a lot of ways, come down to injuries. It's going to come down to, look, people underestimate in the NFL. If you catch a team that's maybe a good team, but you catch them on a week where they're banged up, or you catch them on a week where you're coming off a bye and they're playing their second or third straight road game. Like that might be the difference in a division that tight. I do think that the Raiders are the worst of the four, only because I think defensively outside of the edge rushers, they're a tire fire. I don't think they're going to stop any of these other three teams. I think Denver's a better team. I think the Chargers can score. Although it's got to be said, the Raiders got to the playoffs last year. The Chargers didn't. The Chargers lost games down the stretch that were ridiculous, including a game to Houston where literally half the team was on a COVID list. So, no, I think it is very, first of all, I think it's very possible, and if not plausible, three of those teams are making the playoffs this year. And there's going to be a hard luck fourth team that could go 8-9, 9-8, and not get in. I'm curious, so staying in the AFC, Chad, your thoughts on Deshaun Watson, but from a former player's perspective. The Browns last year watched Mayfield play hurt all year long. Say whatever you want about the guy. He stuck it out. He was out there game in, game out, fighting for his guys. They don't make the playoffs. The Browns somewhat during the offseason, look, it gets leaked out that they want a leader at the quarterback spot. Then they go and sign Deshaun Watson. If you're a player in that room right now, are you feeling like, look, I don't care. We got a better player on the field and I'm good with it regardless of the circumstances around it? Or are you like, that guy just fought his ass off and was hurt all year long, and they basically sent them down the river for somebody who, A, we don't know if he's going to start the season suspended or active, and B, is facing a lot of off-field allegations. I mean, how would you come down on it from a player's point of view?
Yeah, the Cleveland Browns have got themselves into a heck of a mess. Now, obviously, trading Baker Mayfield eliminates that possible distraction from the locker room, but you still have to deal with the ripples across the pond that move makes. And so to your point, yeah, here's a guy who did what you want your quarterback to do, to be tough, to find a way to be in the lineup almost every single week, and to show his teammates, how invested he is in Baker Mayfield. Obviously, the results weren't great, but as a player, you have to respect that. Then comes Deshaun Watson, and he comes in with all this baggage, as you mentioned, still trying to see what the league is going to do as far as coming down on his suspension. Every player in that locker room has a mom. Most guys are married. Most guys have a sister. So there's a woman in everyone's life. And so here comes this guy who seems to be, at least from the outside, without having all the details, a serial, maybe predator's too big of a word, but putting women in very bad situations. And he himself is guilty of very, very poor choices. I've been in the NFL. I played for 15 years. I did coaching internships. So I've been around the NFL for a long time. If this is just to be believed as you are just seeking out massage therapy, this is the most unusual path to massage therapy I've ever seen in my entire life. Russell Wilson is getting heat in Denver because he flies with his team everywhere he goes. Well, by his team, his body person, his massage therapy person. When he's going over to Monaco to do promotion for F1 racing, his team flies with him. He doesn't go on Instagram in Monaco and find a massage therapist. So this is just ridiculous on its face, Deshaun Watson's behavior. Now, whether it's criminal, whether that is going to be, a half a year suspension or a full year suspension, all that remains to be seen. But if I'm in that locker room, I need to have a conversation with you. If we're going to hitch our wagons to you and you're going to be the guy, this is not the fifth wide receiver in the game or the fourth cornerback in the game. This is the quarterback. There needs to be a level of trust. There needs to be a level of understanding of what kind of person you are, what kind of character you have. So if I'm a leader in that locker room, I need to have Deshaun Watson have some frank contrition and an open conversation with his teammates about what went down, and at least to admit, at the very, very least, you are guilty of very poor judgment and awful behavior. Because I don't think there's any other way to spin that. When you've contacted 60-plus massage therapists through Instagram, when every team has dedicated, professional, vetted massage therapists, clearly you were doing something and you were trying to do it outside the normal ways that everyone gets massage therapy. It's an ugly look, and I need to know who you are as a character and as a person before I can hitch my wagon to you.
Do you think that goes down, Chad? Do you think whenever he gets there, there's some meeting where he addresses the whole team, or I don't know, I'm not exactly sure if the Browns have a leadership council or just a captain's meeting, whatever it would be. Like, how do you think that happens? Or if
I were Deshaun Watson, which, obviously I've got severe pushback on this, so I don't think I would be in this situation. But yeah, let me meet with every player on the team. We don't need the coaches. We don't need the front office involved. Let me meet with every player and have a discussion, have a chance to, give my 5 or 10 minute details about who I am and why this was a mistake and why I'm going to be better in the future. Maybe have the opportunity to answer a couple of questions so we can then kind of put this to bed and move forward. And, maybe arm these guys with not necessarily, quote unquote, talking points, but the media is going to descend upon the Cleveland Browns locker room, and everyone in that locker room is going to be asked this question. They have to have a chance to get to know this guy other than saying, Deshaun hasn't said anything and I just want to play football. That's not going to cut it considering how serious these allegations are.
I'm curious. You look at the AFC, and I can't remember a time where a conference was more loaded, at least in the last 20 or so years. Certainly the AFC's had years where, of course, Brady and Manning were dominant in it, so on and so forth. But this year, with Wilson coming over to Denver, joining a team that already has a lot of talent, you already have Mahomes and Herbert and Allen. You have Matt Ryan now in Indianapolis, Burrow in Cincinnati. Do you think one of these teams for you stands out above the rest? I know Buffalo is a betting favorite. I've gone on record saying I think they're the best team in the AFC. Do you feel there's a team you look at and go, yeah, you know what, I like them more than everybody else? Or is it for you more of a group of teams? You say, look, I think all these teams are in the same class essentially, and you pick one out of the hat.
I'm going to go with Buffalo as the best team. But as you talked about earlier when you were discussing the AFC West, I don't think they're that far ahead where it's just an absolute slam dunk. Some injuries, weather games, whoever comes out of the AFC West is going to be incredibly battle tested. They are going to be toughened by that gauntlet of a division. The Colts, they run the ball great, and they've just been lacking quarterback play. So you add Matt Ryan over there. Lamar Jackson is looking like he, spent the offseason in the weight room. That guy's looking thick and strong. So if he can stay healthy, what does that mean for the Ravens? So there's teams all around the AFC who you can point to, maybe not saying that they're better than the Buffalo Bills, but you can see them in the right circumstance, in the right scenario, and as we've seen so many times the last couple of seasons, if you are able to get hot late while everyone else is maybe fading or going through injuries or not quite hitting on all cylinders, you can get hot late. I wouldn't be surprised if any of these top teams we're talking about could be, surpassed by, I don't know, let's say Mike Vrabel and the Tennessee Titans. Derrick Henry gets on a roll late and no one can stop the powerful run game, something like that. I wouldn't be surprised if a dark horse emerges from the group, basically.
Chad, you played for, iconic franchises, the Steelers. Seattle's a great organization, obviously New England. And I'm just curious, like if you were to sort of break down in your mind, like who was run the best of the best of the best. That's how I'm looking at it. How, and maybe why? What would you say?
Wow. They're all three kind of differently run. I suppose the Steelers and the Patriots are most similar because of the family ownership. But the Rooney family and the Kraft family are very different. Dan Rooney's house was just a couple of blocks away from the stadium. He walked to the stadium on game day. Mr. Kraft drives a Bentley, through the circle of the stadium so he doesn't have to walk very far into the team meeting room. So, family ownership, but it operates in a very, very different way versus Seattle. When Paul Allen was still alive, Paul Allen came for picture day, and Paul Allen maybe was in the locker room after a big win or something like that. So very hands-off ownership. But in the end, I think it illustrates that there are multiple ways to winning, but no matter who the owner is, there needs to be a figurehead on top. Mr. Rooney was at practice every day when I was a Pittsburgh Steeler my first 4 years there. Every single day that he was in town, he was at practice. And, when the cat's away, the mice will play. When Mr. Rooney is at practice, that tends to lift up your effort a little bit when the owner is around. Mr. Kraft is at that 7:45 team meeting in New England every morning if he is in town. So not only is he, hanging around at practice, but he's in the team meeting itself. That also raises the attention level. No one's going to go to sleep when the owner's in the room versus in Seattle where Paul Allen wasn't there. So it took, Mike Holmgren or Pete Carroll or a stronger head coach to be able to kind of fill that void of the lack of ownership in the building. But they're all three organizations that give the players what they need to be successful as far as the facilities, the nutrition, the food, creating an atmosphere where you feel like we're all in this together. When I was a Pittsburgh Steeler, Mr. Rooney's wife went out and bought my daughter's first game day outfit after she was born in August. His wife bought that. She didn't send the secretary out to get it. She went to the children's boutique and bought it herself. They gave out Christmas presents in Pittsburgh that were very personal. I got a chance to have a lot of great conversations with Mr. Kraft in New England. So the ownership piece really sets the tone for the entire organization. Obviously I'm in Denver, and now with Robson Walton and his group taking over the Denver Broncos, how do you replace the void that has been left after Pat Bowlen's death and the kind of meandering way the Broncos have been the last 6 or 7 years without his leadership? They're going to need somebody to step in and give that organization the clear direction forward. Ownership does matter, not just, from a financial perspective with does the team have enough of funds to do what it needs to do, but it actually pays dividends on the field. Wins and losses sometimes can be directly related to ownership.
A couple more minutes with Chad Brown, the two-time All-Pro, three-time Pro Bowler who joins us here on Stacking the Box. And, Chad, I wanted to ask you, this kind of segues perfectly. You played on those Steelers teams in the 90s. It, frankly, I think are one of the more underrated defenses in history. You look back at that team yourself, Kevin Green, Greg Lloyd, who gets lost to time but was a phenomenal player, Cardinal Lake, Rod Woodson, Levon Kirkland, the names go on and on and on. You guys got to a Super Bowl with an offense that was very much a meat and potatoes offense, I think is a nice way to put it. What was it like being on the field with that group, having a defensive-minded head coach in Bill Cowher, where you guys pretty much knew, hey, look, we're going to win, it's on us, but we have the talent to do it?
We recognize that, the team was built around the defense. Bill Cowher was a linebacker and a special teams guy when he played in the NFL. So he brought that kind of mindset as a head coach. He expected the offense to be efficient, expected the offense to be able to run the ball physically. Now, towards the end of that year we played the Cowboys in the Super Bowl, we had a weird hybrid offense of physical run game and a mix of 5 wide receivers. So teams had a difficult time preparing for it. So there was some dynamicness to that offense, but for the most part, to your point, we won the game defensively. That linebacker core you mentioned, myself, Levon, Greg, and Kevin, NFL Films has rated us as the 7th best linebacker group of all time. I wish we would have had the opportunity to stay together longer. All of us have been all pro. All of us were Pro Bowlers. For 5 years, Greg Lloyd was literally the baddest man in football, 12th degree Taekwondo, black belt. Kevin Green, rest in peace, the greatest, pass rusher mercenary ever for hire. So, yes, a remarkable defense, but there was a certain amount of pressure every single game. And we won a lot of games in my time with the Steelers, 17-14, 20-17, 21-14. That was literally just one score games. And so that pressure that puts on your defense was tremendous. But fortunately, with Hall of Fame teammates and Hall of Famers out there, we were able to get it done.
There are tough guys in the NFL. You have to be somewhat tough, period, to play in the NFL. Then there's people like Greg Lloyd, who scare other NFL players. That takes a certain level of talent. I'm curious, do you have a story about Greg Lloyd that illustrates just how much he terrifies other NFL players? A little peek behind the curtain into who he was, because I always thought of all the guys on that team, Kevin Green, like you said, rest in peace, a wild man, right? A hair flowing, a lunatic of a player. But Greg Lloyd, like I've asked people about this before I played in that era, who said like he was terrifying, even as a player. Like, just do you have any kind of insight into him, into who he was, back in the day?
Oh, God, goodness gracious. How much time do we have? Off the top of my head, at the beginning of the training camp, Greg Lloyd would, bring some of his Taekwondo paraphernalia with him. And one of them was like a long staff. And there wasn't a lot of room in the dorm room for Greg to practice. So he would go up to the parking lot where the players parked, and he would practice with his bow staff and do all of his stuff. And when you parked your car, like coming back from lunch or, running a quick errand, and Greg was out there with his bow staff, you literally had to walk the other way around the dorm because he would want to practice on you. And, you couldn't tell Greg no because he was the baddest man in football. So, yeah, he's intimidating people, professional athletes, the toughest of the tough, and making them walk all the way around the other way of the dorm just to avoid him. LaVon Kirkland, if you look back at tape of that era, for about 2 seasons, he wore a cast on one of his hands. And that cast came about because LaVon was complaining about some wrist pain during practice. And Greg said, "Oh, let me see it," held his hand, and then karate chopped his wrist, broke a bone in LaVon's wrist, and broke the bone so bad it took like 14 months to heal. And then here's the topper. We had special teams practice before every practice. So, LaVon and myself, being younger guys, are out at practice early doing our special teams duties. Kevin and Greg didn't have any special teams responsibilities, so they would go out there and kind of play around and laugh and joke around. Well, the jugs machine is right where Greg and Kevin are laughing. And Bill Cowher is coming out of the locker room, and, it was the old Three Rivers Stadium where we practiced. So it's essentially kind of coming out of the baseball dugouts, as it were. So they take the jugs machine and they fire a football and hits Bill Cowher in the groin with a football from a jugs machine from about 50 yards away. And, Bill Cowher's clearly got a temper. And we've seen Bill Cowher's jaw and all the NFL films, clips of him getting in somebody's face and going all full Bill Cowher on him. Bill Cowher takes a knee because he just got hit in the groin. He takes a knee and he gets up and he sees that it's Greg, and then he has to go, "Okay, man, funny, that's a good one." Even Bill Cowher was afraid to confront Greg Lloyd.
That's
awesome.
You over delivered on that. I had to ask. It's great. Last thing for me from back in the day, you played against. You spanned a long time. You mentioned you played 15 years, so you played against a lot of great players. Who was the best quarterback that you ever faced? The guy who was toughest to deal with?
Okay. Well, since you brought up old stuff, as we like to say, that Kansas City-Pittsburgh matchup, that was my rookie year. And so we played them in Kansas City. It's a cold Kansas City January day. And for the most part, we have kept Joe Montana in check. And the last drive of the game, Joe's talking to the coach on the sideline. He comes jogging into the huddle, and his body language and his demeanor was so cool and so calm. It was like a 60s or 50s mafia movie or something. Like he kind of dropped his cigarette and, butted out with his shoe. All right, guys, in the huddle. And then he would just drove them down the field in this most beautiful, confident, methodical way. And they win that playoff game. And that's when I first realized that it's not necessarily about your talents, your skill, your arm, your speed, your ability to do this or that. It is your mindset and your ability to create a sense of confidence and a sense of belief within that huddle. Now, I had Warren Moon as a quarterback when I was a Seattle Seahawk.
Yep.
I played with the GOAT, in my opinion, in Brady in New England. But having to play against my childhood hero, one of the guys who I admired the most ever in the NFL, and Joe Montana, and to see how he walked into that huddle and literally everyone in that huddle's shoulders dropped. And just seeing that happen, now suddenly I'm on the other side of the ball and I'm intimidated because, oh, goodness, these dudes got confidence. What's about to happen? Well, I'll tell you what happened. They drove down the field. They scored the touchdown. They won the ball game. That's what happened.
It's interesting that you go that route. You play the Cowboys in the Super Bowl and Troy and Emmett and all that stuff, but like the Montana thing sticks out in your head. I think that's just awesome to hear. I love that story. And also, by the way, I was just looking up, I'm looking at your playoff history. Of course, Verderame, it's like Rain Man over here, Chad. He remembers every single game. Like, do you know that he played in Dan Marino's last win? I don't know if you remember about Old Man Dan, but did you know that off the top of your head that Marino's last victory came against you guys in the playoffs in Seattle?
Yes, I am aware of that. I, unfortunately, have been on the field for many milestones for my opponents. The list is long. Terrell Davis, 2,000-yard rush against my Seattle Seahawks last game of the season in Denver. I got to come all the way across the field to make the tackle. So you can see me blast Terrell Davis at the Broncos sideline. Then you see his teammates literally grab me and throw me off of him as they pick him up and celebrate him. Emmitt Smith setting the all-time rushing record. Who has to come across the field to make a tackle? That's me. Yeah, so I've been a part of a lot of these historic moments for other people. They should all send me some of their dividend checks from NFL Films or something because, I'm a part of all of that, unfortunately.
Yeah, well, that's awesome, man. You had a phenomenal career. You're still rolling, doing everything you do. Which, by the way, we should mention that don't you have a business, Ship Your Reptiles, as well that you got cooking over there?
Yes, so I've got Ship Your Reptiles. I also have Ship Your Aquatics. So whether it's businesses or hobbyists or you're just a military family who needs to move little Timmy's turtle from Tennessee to Texas, I provide the shipping, the packaging, the expertise, and the know-how on how to be able to successfully execute those kinds of shipments. I provide that services mainly for the pet trade. But again, families and individuals need to move their animals. I do that as well. So it keeps me busy between talking into cameras and microphones with folks like you guys.
What kind of reptiles you got in the Brown household?
I've got, once upon a time, I had Pro Exotics Reptiles. We were one of the largest reptile breeders on the planet. I produce several thousand baby reptiles every single year. But currently, I've got a pretty small collection, only about 20 reptiles. I've got some green tree pythons, a beaded lizard, some giant geckos, some of the more interesting species in the pet trade. And I've also got a species of python, the Halimahera scrub python, that I was on a trip to Indonesia about 20 years ago and helped discover that species of python.
Is that a snake?
Yes, it's a python, Carm.
Pythons.
I
Pythons
got
are
it.
snakes.
I just don't. I understand.
Carm's head is exploding right now.
Yeah,
I don't 20 reptiles in house.
I just like a friendly dog myself, but so like can you explain the like what do you get out of the snake? Why do you like having it? What does it do for you? Explain.
Okay, well, I mean, obviously dogs are tremendous pets. I mean, there's a reason why the relationship between dogs and humans is what it is. But dogs require daily walks. Some depending on the breed, a couple walks a day. They require all this interaction. Reptiles are great because I think a lot of us have a inborn need to care and nurture for something, but maybe our lifestyle is busy. Maybe, we want a pet that's a little bit more hands-off, but still gives us that connection to something outside of ourselves. So there's a fascinating aspect to snakes. Some people find snakes actually beautiful. They're definitely very interesting creatures. The fact that they are a completely different life form than what we are. We're warm-blooded. They're cold-blooded. We have hair. They don't. We have eyelids. They don't. Heck, we have limbs and they don't. So it's a completely different form of life that has a fascination of its own. And, you know, as a person, it sounds like you got a little bit of a snake phobia. I hate to tell you this, but reptiles have been the fastest growing segment of the pet market for over 10 years in a row now. So there are more and more reptiles kept in households around the country, and it continues to be a ever-growing segment of the pet market. So who knows? You know, you could be one of those people one day.
I'm getting more comfortable, or at least trying to by the minute here. Chad, you're an interesting cat. I love this stuff. There's another household situation. Yes, Ferdinand.
No, I was going to say, I could picture Carm right now. You're locking yourself in your office. My cousin back in the day had an iguana who was awesome. We used to play with that thing all the time.
Right on.
Yeah, in any event, listen, Chad, I really appreciate you coming on, taking a half hour as it turns out. I am really looking forward to this season in the AFC West, and it's going to be very, very interesting. You're going to have a front row seat there in Denver. Just real quick, just tell everybody, you know, what you're working on and what to look forward to and how to find you.
All right, so I have my daily radio show in Denver on 104.3 The Fan. I do a ton of stuff with the Broncos on the Broncos flagship station of 9 News out there in Denver. And then almost every single weekend, I will be off either doing a college football game or an NFL football game for Compass Media. So, it's the busy time of the year is about to kick into action for me, and I absolutely love it. In my family, we got 2 seasons. We got football season, and we got waiting for football season, and the waiting is almost over.
Is that a cactus back there? Are you in Arizona right now? Where are you?
I am at my place in Arizona. Yes, and there's a couple of cactuses right outside this window.
You like that, Ferdinand? I was able to diagnose that on the fly like that.
Congratulations! It's yes, you were able to figure out what a cactus is. Good for you, Carm. Way to go! Way to knock that out.
Chad, awesome to talk to you, man. Continued success to you. We look forward to doing it down the road.
This was a lot of fun, guys. Looking forward to chopping up. I'll give you more reptile info whenever you guys are ready. This was fun.